Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ask JP. Today's question is from Prajnit Nirmal. He's a student of engineering. Please go ahead, Prajnit.
Myself, Pragnit. I'm pursuing my engineering. Ask JP is a very informative program, and thank you for launching it, sir. And today, my question to you is: when we know more about the system, we will have an emotional anger towards the flaws and mistakes happening it. So this may be the reason for the normal people to be ignorant. So I wonder how people like Jayaprakash Narayan sir and many analysts like Professor Nageshwar sir will not get so much angry over the issues, but they analyze. So how do you do it, sir?
Thank you, Prajnit. Maybe part of the answer is old age. As we grow older, we get less angry. But on a more serious note, it is a challenge. When you see all around you things that ought not to happen, it's easy to give way to anger. But anger is not really a very useful response. Unless you creatively channelize anger, constructively channelize anger, and look at innovative solutions and make change happen, anger is a wasted emotion. It actually corrodes you. This is something that we all have to learn. There is no substitute to that. As a young person, you can afford to be angry because between the ideal you have in your mind or what you're taught at school or at home and what is happening in the real world, there's an enormous gulf that makes you angry. But in some ways, growing up means you channelize that anger creatively and then figure out what is it that you can do to make your ideal a reality, at least in some measure, if not in full measure. But there's also another way of looking at it. Do you want to be a part of the problem or do you want to be a part of the solution? You and me exhibiting anger and shouting slogans and marching protests and doing Rasta Roko and Hartals, it may be romantic, but it's utterly unproductive. It's a part of the problem. It's not a solution. Everybody knows, without even going onto the street, the problems of corruption, the problems of elections, wrong kind of leadership, money power in elections, then the short-term individual welfare measures at the cost of the long-term growth and the collective needs of the community, substandard education, denying millions of children an opportunity to rise in life, very bad healthcare system, which is impoverishing millions of people in the country, the poor infrastructure, a bit of a rain and there is flooding, all these problems we know. Merely shouting from rooftop doesn't make it better. If you want to be a part of the solution, you must figure out what is it that needs to be done. And what can we do as citizens, collectively or individually, to make it happen, to be a part of the solution. But there's also a third way of looking at it. Look at the long trajectory of history. It's very difficult for a young person to recognize there was a life 50 years ago, 100 years ago. It was infinitely worse than today. What we take for granted today, they were simply unapproachable, unreachable for the ordinary people. Take electricity, a simple thing like electricity. 30 years ago, perhaps even 20 years ago, we could not have had this interaction with uninterrupted power. Today, most of the time, we can be reasonably confident that there's uninterrupted power supply. 30, 40 years ago, to make a phone call to a place 30, 40 kilometers away was a very painful task. It was a test of endurance, and you had to spend a lot of money, wait for hours to be able to merely talk to somebody. Today, from your comforts of your home, you can talk to anybody in the world at a very low cost. Look at the computing technology, the digital technology, the 24-hour communication, satellite television. The world is changing for the better every day. Our lives are getting better. Yes, we can do a lot better. There's a gulf between what should happen and what is happening. But considering what used to happen earlier, we have already come considerable distance. So if we press a little harder, if you make a little more effort, a lot more can be done. Now, once we realize that, your despair and anger, they give way to a robust sense of optimism and a resolution to actually make things happen the way they should happen. How does change actually take place? I always believe in what Margaret Mead said. Change rarely happens because millions of people march on the streets with angry tones and slogans. That is more a demonstration of anger. Headline stuff. Rarely do you see significant real change happening through those methods. Even when a revolution actually succeeded in changing a government, there's almost no instance where such a revolutionary change actually brought about a revolution in terms of outcomes. Real change happens by thoughtful, collective citizen action. As Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, that's the only thing that ever did. So if you understand that, you look at the best practices in your own country and globally. You look at technology and science, how opportunities are opening up. You find answers and you try and institutionalize in your own milieu. And over time, what becomes initially what is difficult becomes part of nature, part of our culture. People embrace it easily. Sometimes the process is long and arduous. You must have infinite patience. As Gandhiji said, and many other people said, a reformer must have infinite patience. But results do flow. Personally, each of us must find a way of guarding ourselves against anger and despair. Now, I have long ago decided and taken a pledge that I will never be a part of the problem. I will be a part of the solution. And above all, I think you also must have a sense of humor. In the midst of all this ugliness, all this foolishness, you also must have the capacity to laugh at yourself and your society, and sometimes at humanity. But without that, if you're always somber, serious, morose, angry, frustrated, it dissipates you and your capacity to actually make a difference diminishes, and you'll be an unhappy human being. I think it's possible to combine happiness even when you see a lot of unhappiness around, because if you actually are making significant efforts to change the outcome, to make lives better, then even the unhappiness surrounding you need not really depress you or make you unhappy. You can still retain that core of happiness and have a sense of humor. It's not easy always, but please remember, young people in particular, 30, 40, 50 years ago, the world was much more unbearable. Our own country was much, much worse and worse off. We are doing well. We can do much better. We need to do much better. Let's focus on that rather than complaining and criticizing too much. I don't know if there's a perfect answer to this question of Prajnat, but I think we all must find those answers in ourselves.